In this episode, we chat with Ryder, a renowned internet artist and creator who has produced the RRBAYC NFT collection that brings into question what an NFT actually is. We dive into Ryder's full history as a digital artist and what led him to creating this project. This project has caused a huge controversy and conversation in the NFT space, and now we get the full story from the artist himself. So I don't want to waste any more time. Let's jump right into this conversation with Ryder. Ryder, how you doing today?
Shitty. No, I'm fine. Everyone just says, I'm good, bro. I'm good. No, I'm
going
good.
Against the norm. I think that's going to be something that will stay consistent in this conversation. But we have a lot to talk about today, a lot with your recent projects. You have a lot of projects that you've done that are really amazing. But I just want to set some context and paint the picture, if you will, of you as an artist as we move forward into this NFT stuff. But I just want people to know a bit about you. So if you can let the listeners know about your history in the arts and what it means to you, that would be a great place to start.
Sure. So I'm Ryder Rips, and I'm 35 years old. I was born in New York City, and my father is an artist. His name is Rodney Rips. He was practicing mostly in the late 70s, early 80s. He was part of a movement called abstract expressionism, which was a lot of sort of heavy paint and using materials in sort of abstracting materials in sort of very expressive ways. And there are a bunch of other artists who are sort of working within that sort of framework, and it was sort of a reaction against like pop art and stuff like that. Not against it, but at the same time, it was also embraced by a lot of pop artists because there was kind of a fatigue at that point with pop art. And my father became friends with like Andy Warhol, and was just part of the scene in New York City and Soho at the time. There was just a lot of cool artists, making stuff, and he was amongst that scene. I was born in New York, and I grew up in Massachusetts for some of my life, and I was sort of isolated. And I remember my dad getting a IBM Aptiva Windows 95 machine, and I immediately gravitated to it, and it kind of became my life. And right around the age of like 8 or 9, I like discovered IRC and was like already playing Doom and just doing, kind of like crazy stuff on the internet because I didn't really have many friends in real life, and my parents were getting divorced at that time and stuff like that. So I, discovered Adobe Photoshop and Bryce 3D and Poser and a lot of cool software, and I became immersed in the creation of digital images and immersed in sort of a hacker aesthetic and wares and just the whole culture around piracy and around kind of being free on the internet and trolling and having fun and using IRC and meeting people who are strangers and kind of creating your own identity, and that really continued for my whole life. And I think maybe I got into like creating music and stuff like that, and so perhaps when I was like a teenager, I was a little bit less interested in digital art. But I kind of rekindled it around college when I started exploring like working in advertising professionally, because I got an internship in that. Actually, also before that, I started working for someone who was my dad's apprentice, whose name is Daron Galan, and he operated a website called computerfinearts.org. And he basically was a archive and museum for a lot of amazing digital art, internet art, really. A lot of this was like Flash based. So I got exposed to digital art around that time, which I was like 17 or 18 or something like that. And I was working for him, just doing like, menial tasks and stuff like that. So that's kind of the point when I was like, oh, damn, there's like actually practicing artists who are like taking this seriously as a medium. Cause like before, I could use Photoshop and stuff. And I actually, I learned how to like program in HTML and CSS and stuff like that. I made some websites, but I never took it seriously as like an art form because I never even realized that there were people doing that. And at that point, I started just, kind of thinking about that. And I was making some like wheat pastes and putting those around New York. And yeah, I mean, this was like, then I was in college and I went to college for media studies, which is basically the philosophy behind media, reading like Derrida and Deleuze and Baudrillard and shit like that. And anyway, so yeah, I mean, I was quickly exploring internet culture again in a way that I hadn't really engaged with since I was like a little kid. And around that time, I found out that um, Yahoo, who owned this website called GeoCities, which was a massive network of amateur websites. Basically, before social media, people would take it upon themselves to learn some code and learn some graphics software and stuff like that, and then create their own website. And that was the way you would express yourself. And GeoCities provided free hosting and sort of this kind of network that was analogous in the way they designed it to cities. And those cities had different, kind of like interests, like pets or sports and things like that, or music. So when GeoCities was when Yahoo announced that GeoCities was being deleted, I was very irked by this because it was something that from my childhood I was a part of and I was moved by. And a lot of those graphics were so amazing because they were created with a complete naivete to like art and design. And they were created with new types of software. So like the actual images themselves were like nothing anyone had ever seen before. And yet they were part of an internet that at that time was seen as trash. And it was kind of like good riddance, and that was with the incoming Web 2, as it's called, and Yahoo basically decided to delete the whole thing, and so I decided to archive a lot of it and make a sort of museum for this stuff, and I called that Internet Archaeology, and that was like the first digital art project that I did that like got attention, and like I was in Wired magazine and I was like still in college at this point. But part of the project was sort of thinking about the purpose of a museum in general. Like if you go to the Met, you'll see different artifacts on display, and you might also see a class of artists who are at the museum drawing Venus or drawing Rodin's sculpture or something like that. So, there's a constant dialogue between like the old and the new. And so in that sort of regard, I also wanted to create basically a reinterpretation and recontextualization of these images. So I, contacted friends of mine who are internet artists to create like guest galleries, I called them, where they would take images from the archive and recontextualize them and make new art out of them. And some of those artists are Danny Leva, Chris Wood, Tabor Roback, and basically like through this whole process, I discovered that what I was really interested in was bringing people together and meeting people based on like-minded in things, and creating a culture around something that people are passionate about. So in that regard, I was just consuming so many images, and in that regard, I wanted to figure out what I could do with my friends and myself, that would be something that would help our consumption of images in mass. And at this point, like blogging was still a big thing, and like Blogger and in Tumblr, but people were using Tumblr in a way that was very quick. Like they would post like 100 things a day, and I was like, this is a very inefficient system. So I created a website with Scott Osler, and it was called Dump FM. And Dump FM was a real-time image sharing website. And basically what that means is this chat room where you could post an image link or you could upload an image and you would see it in real time. And this kind of sounds like, what's the big deal now? Because every single chat app has this, like, Discord or Telegram or any of that stuff has this. But this was at a time when like the entire notion of chat rooms was frowned upon because it was like of a past era. And no one was doing chat rooms at all. And so like I made this site that was a chat room with images, and people could create montage and put things together and talk with each other, but it was mostly, all image based. And so what that did was it created this like feeling of proximity with other artists in the room. So people would create at such a pace because they would know that you would see the user list, and it's sort of the difference between text message and email, where it's like if someone sends you a text, the expectation is that you're going to respond to it, but if someone sends you an email, perhaps you can wait, a day or something like that. And the same sort of theory was at play here, where people were responding very quickly. Anyway, so through that website, I met a lot of people. Like, for instance, I met MIA, and I started working with her in a professional capacity, doing like web stuff. This was like 2010. And so that was like my first client in music. And I always was into music because I used to collect synths and I used to make music and stuff like that. So for me, like making websites and making digital art that was, with musicians as a collaboration was like a thrill, and it seemed to make a lot of sense for my skill set. And that's something that I continued throughout the rest of my career. The other thing that I would say so that's how my commercial practice started, and my art practice actually started in college, where I made a movie that was sort of a mockumentary, like in the style of like you could say like Spinal Tap is like a mockumentary, right? It's like a fake documentary, and it was called Ryder is Famous, and it was a bunch of people basically. It was almost like scripted or semi-scripted, where people were using hyperbole and sensationalism to talk about me, and like as if I was this famous character. And a lot of the tactics that I was talking about in this movie that I made, which was my senior work for college, were about how in the future sensationalism. Basically, in the future, the internet, because the internet prioritizes sensationalist content, the people who will be famous in the future are going to be diabolical sensationalist characters. And that thesis was like in 2008, and I think it's progressively gotten more and more approved as time goes by.
100%.
Like we have an entire president, or we had an entire president who was like a clickbait president and sensationalist president. So I think it's pretty obvious that thesis has real merit. And anyway, so basically being cognizant of those factors is I think a essential part of a lot of my personal artwork. So my trajectory for the next 12 years now has been basically pursuing various projects on a personal level, and most of those projects don't make a lot of money, and they're kind of edgy and hard to commodify. And then the other part of my life and practice is commercial projects. So after I made that Dump FM site, I was tapped by a friend of mine who worked at V Magazine, and he said, "Well, you should work with this person who's an investor and start our website." So I started this website called V Files, and I came up with the name and I came up with the whole team, and that was like an extremely successful fashion sort of designy website. It was cool. And from there, I started this company called OK Focus. And OK Focus, we basically we started as mostly web, but quickly we went into design because just kind of happenstance. Actually, it started with web because it was a void in the market that I could see, where there was no like real web design agency who had any like sense of design or taste or anything like that. So I was like, we should basically just apply design and like cool kind of like artistic thought to commercial web stuff. And we would do some stunts that would get a lot of attention back in the day when people still went on websites. Like we made a website called Where's the Pixel, that was just a pixel, and you had to find it, and it was just a viral game. We made another website that was called letmetweetthatforyou.com, which was the first sort of fake Twitter thing, to basically like make it seem like you had a tweet from someone that didn't exist. We made a lot of apps that were pretty popular. We made this one called Overlayer that basically is kind of like a meme generator where it would, stack transparent PNGs on top of things. And we worked with a lot of big companies such as Nike and Google and Facebook, and made projects with a lot of musicians. We launched this cool interactive video with Bruno Mars that had basically, if you hashtagged something on Instagram, it was when Instagram first introduced the video feature. And this was sort of to roll that out, where you would kind of like get your video inserted into this collective of music videos. So that's just one example of the kind of work that we would do. We'd make these microsites that were pretty successful and cool and stuff like that. And we were really prolific, actually. And it was at a time before like this Web3 boom, where I think people were still skeptical of like the purpose of, being different on the internet in general.
No, it sounds like you have had so much experience leading up to this point that intertwines and makes so much sense to where you arrived at right now. Because I was doing my research and looking you up because I found you from your most recent project, but I was and then hearing you in Twitter Spaces and now hearing you, it just makes so much sense, especially from a young age with your father, and then all of these projects from an early age with this digital twist to it. And I love how you took that position where you saw there was mass attention and you put a spin on it and did something different every time than most people were doing. And with a true artist integrity attached to it, which is brilliant, which, before I got into web development, I used to tour as a musician. So I had my, outlets of doing things creative, but the way that you handled it is amazing. I have to say, like, that's quite the lineup, man. That's
Yeah, I mean, I always wanted to have that distance where, if it's a project that's a Ryder Rips project, I have full autonomy, and like I'm not thinking about how to sell it. I have no outside like forces like swaying me, and then I can do that because I'm afforded that ability through my client work, which is supporting me.
That's what I was gonna say too. It's super awesome how you found that balance to have your commercial side and have that sense of like, all right, this is what funds and this is how I'm going to be as an artist, because a lot of artists have a difficult time approaching the art industry when they just approach it just as their personal art.
Yeah.
And that time lapse, that lifespan they have in the scene is short because they aren't able to sustain it. But you've made yourself very, like, you hustled, grinded, and used a lot of inspiration to like twist that into some really cool things. And yeah, I mean, a lot of people can learn from that.
Yeah, it's also been an uphill battle because I am sort of like ADD and I'm always like moving. Like, for instance, I created face filters like that track your face, MIA, and I created that. Like, we made it for a project in 2010. And, that became like the foundation to entire apps like Snapchat or something like that. You know what I mean? So
that's insane.
A lot of things, I don't necessarily carry through in a way that is sort of an approach that's traditional in terms of like venture capital or in terms of startup or something like that. Like a lot of my projects are sort of these very fast things. And I'm learning the older I get that you have to tell people the same thing 1,000 times, 100 different ways for them to really understand it. And, a lot of my things, I just will, have these bursts of creativity and put them out there and not realize like, one of these ideas is something that you could pursue for 5 years if you wanted to, but I'm always after the next thing, I've had the privilege to work with so many amazing people throughout my career who I really see as collaborators. Like when I work with a client, I don't have my own aesthetic or anything like that. I might have like a sensibility, I would say, but I definitely don't apply I don't have a look or something like that. Some artists have like some specific, or designers have like a specific look that they do for everything. But like my approach for when I design Soylent is like completely different than, when I worked with Travis Scott and, designed merch. Or did videos, or when I worked with Kanye, or some of the Soylent stuff might apply to Kanye, but but in the regard of as a creative, you mentioned that you're a musician, but like, if you're interested in making music with other people, it's probably most beneficial to kind of feed off of them. And so in that sense, I love the social aspect of creating. And I think that's what Dump FM, this real-time image site that I started had. That's why I love, engaging on Twitter for 10 hours a day. And, I love that feedback and kind of, being able to sort of be agile with ideas and mostly, I guess, aesthetics. Like to me, it's very, aesthetics are a tool, and they're a tool that that is always needing to be adapted for the new. Let's like say there's new screw heads, and like we have new screwdrivers that are always like needing to fit a new screwdriver. And I don't know if that fucking makes sense, but like whatever. like basically, I just think that like it's really dangerous as an artist. Well, I think about this like. I remember, I was getting known as like being a GIF artist in 2011 and 12. And then like I got interviewed by PBS about GIFs. And I remember watching it and just being like, this is so fucking cringe. Like it's so obvious. It's so obvious that the trajectory of this is like, Urban Outfitters or something like that. Like it just gets diluted and ends up meaning nothing. And, I'm after the aesthetics that still carry some sort of meaning, because without that, there's no real purpose. Like to me.
And I think that's kind of how you're so fluid between the projects, is you get the inspiration and, conceptually come up with concepts and ride that out that best suits whatever that mission is. But that creative outlook that you have, I think that's why you continue to work on so many fascinating projects, is because you have that unique vision that isn't, not everyone has, which is very cool. And I really want to start to turn this conversation towards your most recent project with the RRBAYC, the Ryder Rips Bored Ape Yacht Club, where you really flipped a concept conceptually and took a conceptual art project that really started a lot of noise in a great way in the NFT space. And I would just love for you to explain the project, because you're the artist behind it. And I would just love to explore this whole project with you.
For sure. I think in order, because I've been explaining this in different ways, and I find that maybe the most useful starting point is thinking about the nature of digital images, just in terms of people's understanding of NFTs in general. Like, I think it's really important to step back from, these things are going for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and, this celebrity has them, and this person, and there's this, goblins, and there's farting sounds, and all this kind of culture around it. I think a lot of that is a smokescreen that's obfuscating the actual root purpose of this technology and why it exists. So, so the root purpose is basically like to solve a problem that is intrinsic to digital imagery, which is that every digital image is a copy. So if I make something on Photoshop and then I upload it to a server, and then you download it or you look at it on Twitter or Instagram or you go to my website, you've ostensibly copied my image and you've put it into a cache file on your computer. You don't know where that is, but it exists. And you're looking at pixels that are replicated from an original image. You're not there's no one taking that image and like running it to your computer and holding a piece of paper against your screen. So in that sense, one of the slippery things about digital images is being able to trace their origin point, and being able to establish what's called provenance, which is who made this, when did they make it, where has it gone. And so, NFTs were invented in 2014 by Anil Dash and Kevin McCoy as a means of addressing that, as a means of trying to figure out a way, how do we establish authorship on a digital image, which by its own nature is going to spread and is untraceable. And so the solution was, well, let's put something into the blockchain that links to the image and has our signature on it, and that will be timestamped, and we'll be able to say, look, this was made here, and beyond that, it will give us a means of selling this thing. Why can we sell it? Well, we can sell it because it has provenance now. It's not just we're going to sell the thing. Well, why is the thing valuable? Why is that one valuable versus a different one that someone would make? Because it's from the author, it's from the artist, and exactly why a Warhol is valuable, and someone who is just going to go to a silkscreen class and make a fake Warhol, which wouldn't be difficult at all, isn't valuable. I mean, you could say the same for almost any art. It's pretty easy to replicate any work of art, really. Like, I mean, yes, of course, there's fine details, but for all intensive purposes, your eye would not be able to recognize a Rembrandt that is a real Rembrandt from a Rembrandt that you hire a very, very skilled artist to paint for $10,000. There's literally no way that you would be able to tell the difference between those paintings with your eye. I mean, of course, you could analyze them and carbon date and all that stuff, but there are, extremely skilled artists that could, paint anything. So why is one thing worth something and the other isn't worth something? Well, it has to do with provenance. And so the whole idea of NFTs is basically just a tool to establish provenance. So, okay. So once we've established that, which I think...
I think you did a great job explaining that, by the way. So.
Thank you. Yeah. So I think a lot of these provocations that I've been doing for literally the past year, like it didn't start with the apes. It actually started with CryptoPunks. I minted this one 3100 CryptoPunk, which I think sold for $7.2 million at Sotheby's or something, which was the highest recorded sale at the time. And I minted that. And it's funny because it actually like created ripples in the industry. Like it was this unspoken thing, like, oh, you can't just copy that. Like, well, why? Like, to me, it was obvious that like people didn't understand NFTs, because if you understand NFTs, you would know that there's no problem in doing that, because the whole idea of the quote smart contract, the reason it's smart is that it is self-governing. Just like how, if you read the, Satoshi Bitcoin white paper, it was all about how to create a cryptocurrency that wouldn't need the regulatory system of governments and be self-regulating. So in that sense, an NFT is a self-regulating contract, right? So it's a contract that establishes ownership, it establishes authorship, and establishes the date it was created, establishes where, when, where, and time this was made. Anyway, so to my, I was actually not surprised at all, because I was seeing kind of the froth in the market and the Gary V's of the world coming into this space, and a lot of people who didn't really understand or like take the time to think about, like, I don't even think you have to be a internet art expert or a internet culture expert to understand this. I mean, this is purely on like a logical standpoint. You know what I mean? Like, if you actually just sit down and think about it, it makes perfect sense. And as the purpose of NFT, you know what I mean? So like, you're not buying the image, you're buying the token, which is connected to provenance, which is establishing provenance. You know what I mean? So
bingo.
Yeah. So anything else is a crock of shit, to be honest with you. All of the oh, you will have the rights to print this on a hoodie. You own the rights to get this, the rights to this, the royalties on Spotify with the music NFTs, whatever the fuck. It's all total bullshit. And it's a sales tactic. And if someone doesn't believe that it's bullshit, that's totally fine. But they probably don't understand NFTs. But you can believe that, but you're just proving that you don't understand what the hell is going on here. So so basically with the crypto punk thing, I did that before the crypto funk thing, and then by chance, like, the crypto funks thing happened like around the same time. I don't think they saw my thing. I'm not sure exactly how that went down, but regardless, crypto funks was made by someone else, and I minted a few of them. I was a little bit salty because I thought it was kind of like a rip off of my project or something like that. But I minted a few of them, and basically what happened there. So yeah.
Quick question. So when you minted that CryptoPunk, what was your involvement in the crypto space up to that point? Were you maybe buying some coins? Did you buy any NFTs leading up to that?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in crypto since like 2010.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, I just wanted to get the landscape here.
Yeah, I was mining ETH in 2017, and
nice.
I was looking at crypto punks early on, and I knew about that project early on because it was made by another sort of design studio in New York City, which was what I was, which is Yuga Labs. So I was aware of that project since the beginning. And no one cared. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to be rude to them, but like, they didn't have any accolades in design or art to have anyone give a shit.
Yeah, it was just a novel moment. It was more so.
I actually wish I wasn't as much of a hater, not because of the money aspect, but because they actually did invent something amazing, which this 10K NFT innovation is a really amazing thing. And it wasn't until I actually got into crypto funks that I fully understood it on like an emotional level, like which I think is hard for people to imagine without actually getting invested in it, because a lot of this stuff doesn't make any logical sense. Just like, you know what I mean? I mean, same with a lot of emotional things. They don't make logical sense. Like love doesn't make logical sense, but, collecting, digital ephemera that, has arbitrary rare traits, why that would be something that is exciting for an adult, I can't really explain to you, but it is exciting. And, and I totally understand why, and it's totally real. And it wasn't until, much later that I fully accepted that and started getting involved in that process and exploring that, before it was sort of a joke. But I think the more, I think anyone who is gifted an NFT and starts getting into the traits and looking at the stuff, I mean, specifically these 10K projects, which to me has been a focus on my work as of the last 6 months or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So before the CryptoPunk 3100 mint, I minted a few things on Foundation. The person who was one of the people who was early in Foundation. She was the head of community there. Her name's Lindsay Howard. Her first show that she ever curated was about my website called Dump FM in 2010.
No way.
Yeah, so
that's really cool.
She's gone on to be a prolific digital art curator and stuff like that. So she asked me early on. I think I was one of the first people on Foundation. Actually, I was on it. They wanted me to be involved in it before it was even digital art. They were originally going to use NFTs as some way to like verify physical art or something like that. And they asked me to be a part of it and stuff like that.
So it sounds like you understand the technology. You started mining. You've been in since 2010. I mean, that's pretty much inception time. And and I just want to make sure I'm getting the timeline. The CryptoPunk, when you minted that, it really started to snowball into a lot of more activity for you in the NFT side. I guess fast forwarding to the Ryder Rips your recent mint.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Like, what was the inspiration? It sounds like you were getting there, but I just want to try to. It was like
for
Funkst
sure.
Was the next one the Ryder Rips project?
I mean, Funk's isn't a Ryder project, basically. So this guy who goes by Paulie on the internet, like, hit me up and started buying my work, and then he was like, "Can we meet up?" And I met up with him, and he was just so passionate about these funk things, which I kind of was seeing as a bite of my thing. But he explained to me that, like, oh, they got banned from OpenSea. And like, there's all these, people who are still really into it. And like, we have no way to trade it. And we think we're going to make a marketplace. And I was like, that's a great idea. You should make your own marketplace. And you should copy Larva Labs, like, exactly, and call it not Larva Labs. And all this was like talked about just over a cigar or something. We were just hanging out outside in LA. And it's the funniest thing, like 2 months later or 2 months, month and a half or something like that. He texted me and was like, "Here's the marketplace. It's done."
Dude, that's awesome.
It was so crazy. And so that was an amazing thing to witness. And I think ever since that happened, and he gifted me some of the funks for my contribution. But ever since that happened, I started really getting into this idea of community or whatever, like NFT 10K project communities, which is fascinating. And I never really got involved in it, but kind of thinking about the cultish behavior, thinking about sort of the memetics involved, thinking about how these things disseminate, and also that project to me was inspiring because it spoke to the power of true decentralization, where we got banned from OpenSea, and then within our own fruition and the actual implicit technology of NFT, we were able to galvanize our community and create our own marketplace, which is just an amazing story and something that I don't think there's any analogy for in a world previous to this NFT technology.
That's what really stood out to me about the funks too. I had one of the funks on the podcast, and really the story, because the word community gets used so much, but this was a true situation where a community came together in a bad time, which is much harder to do than when things are positive, and really made something out of it. So actually today I got my first funk.
Oh, cool.
I bought one from JPEG Poppy. Shout out JPEG Poppy. He was one of the guys that found Zagabond. So I feel really lucky to have gotten one from him. But no, completely agree. I just wanted to throw in my 2 cents. Because the funks they know what's up, man. It's been a very cool community to witness when the word community has gotten so diluted.
For sure. And to me, the funks really are, they embrace the all the best parts of NFT, which often are used really as buzzwords like decentralization, community, anti-censorship. When Larva Labs sent me a DMCA request about my CryptoPunk 3100 mint a year ago, and I fought it and won it, to me, their act of sending that DMCA request said everything in terms of their respect for the nature of the blockchain and really their understanding of it, which was I was shocked that I'm actually I got less shocked once I found out that they lied and said they were the first NFT and stuff like that. I kind of got the feeling that they actually don't really give a shit, and the whole thing might have been just a mark, like this whole sales thing. But they did innovate something regardless. But when you innovate, if it's purely commercial and you don't have any real passion for the purpose of it, one has to wonder,
that's a good point,
what this thing was. So anyways, so yeah, I mean, sending a DMCA request for an NFT is basically like saying, the courts are still needed. You know what I mean? Sending a DMCA request for an NFT is basically like sending a letter to Satoshi because you lost your private key and like trying to get it back through, like calling the police or something, I mean, it basically like the way this whole system works is that it's self-governing, and if you don't believe in that, then don't participate in it. But that's why it exists. If you want a non-self-governing system, just enter the real world. You know what I mean? Just go, just participate in normal world activities, write contracts, have normal, interactions, financial interactions with people. And you're fine. You don't have to you don't have to participate in blockchain. But if you do participate in blockchain, you should respect and acknowledge the importance of self-governance.
Yeah, and I think your projects have kind of just spoken to that directly in an educational way. It starts that conversation. Otherwise, people take it for face value, which, it's not their fault all the time because, that's just kind of human nature but having that conversation straight out and not just surrounding yourself with niceism and this echo chambers, everything's wonderful.
Right.
I think that's really what, I can't speak for you, but I think that's really what this project represents and that's my takeaway that was really strong. And like, okay, wow, this was meaningful. It did something. There's conversation amongst Twitter. There's people for it, against it. Regardless your standpoint, you're at least looking at the problem.
Yes, I agree. I think conversation is the gateway to learning. I mean, especially engaged learning. It's having.
That's a perfect way to put it. Engaged learning.
Yeah,
I like that. That's really good. And I mean, it's so cool that this has kind of been your deal since you were 14. You were saying with some of this website, and it's so cool how you matured and really brought in all that experience, and you're still, you said you didn't have a particular style earlier in the conversation.
Well, a lot of my projects revolve around trying to prove a point without writing an essay. Proving a point with the art itself. So for instance, I did a project that was this large scale installation called Alone Together. And it was actually paid for by Red Bull, which was really amazing because they just gave me free reign and a pretty good budget to make something really cool. And basically, the idea of the project was to illuminate social aspects and problems with the internet and with being terminally online. So I hired 6 people to basically come to the studio, to the gallery every day, and I built this glass box for them, and inside of the glass box they would work. And then I had a Chrome extension that was looking at all of their images and piping it up, because this was a massive gallery, so it had 2 floors. It was piping it up to the first floor where people first walked in, and I built this box. And you would look into the box, and it was very intimate, and you would see all of these images, all this kaleidoscopic stuff. And then you would see this umbilical cord that was from the box, and it would fed all the way downstairs to that glass
umbilical
box.
Cord.
Yeah, it was like an umbilical cord of wires.
I like that.
So the idea was that the upstairs was the feed, and then you went downstairs, and you were confronted in physical space with these people on computers. So the idea was basically to decrease the proximity between the media that people output and the the people themselves, the corporal
Interesting.
beings. And
Interesting.
I knew that would be awkward because I've experienced, if someone's watching you, for instance, browse Twitter or Instagram, it's sort of an awkward feeling, right? I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but like,
Yeah.
it's a little awkward if someone's over your shoulder watching you, you know what I mean? Just because, it's sort of, there's something that's uncanny about that's
Yep.
unexpected. And I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe we just haven't fully come to grips with our antisocial behavior. But
I think an interesting way to look at that is like we have these beliefs of like people are always on their phone, and then here you are on your phone kind of. But I agree, there's so many other layers to that. But I hear what you're saying.
And then to take it a step further, I interviewed each of the 6 participants and then put those videos that were very up close and personal, like 4K videos of them just talking about themselves right next to them sitting in this cubicle. And it was just it was like, it did create this like sort of awkward detachment from the self and your mediated self being literally detached, but that becomes very apparent when you lessen the proximity between your mediated and your physical self. And if you're being judged based on your media and you're so much more than that as a person, it becomes a little daunting. And
that's a strong piece. Wow.
Yeah. It's called Alone Together. You could look it up.
I definitely am going to do that.
So my work, is trying to show something, say something, without writing an essay. It's trying to prove a point. So like another piece I did was when the CIA was rebranding, people were actually making fun of me on Twitter saying, "Oh, this is a Ryder Rips project." And I thought, oh, that's funny. Like, what if I just said it was a Ryder Rips project? And I have a feeling, because this was such a buzzy moment in the press and on Twitter at that time, that if I had said that, people would pick it up, because I knew that like that sensationalist clickbait type of stuff takes priority over the truth.
Yeah.
And so I just put it in my portfolio. I said, look, I made the CIA logo. Here it is. Which
everything's clicking for me so much, because like I said in the beginning of the conversation, I was someone that saw the project and was interested. And then now digging deeper into it, it all makes so much sense at such a deeper level. And as someone that appreciates stuff like that, I'm just like, fuck yeah. Oh shit, fuck yeah. It gets better and better. So it just sounds like, my thought, just to kind of share, is you grew up through this era where it was like, you had Obey doing the wheat paste, you got into that street art, but you were also had that moment as a kid understanding digital presence. That might not be the right word, but the ability of what the internet had, and you meshed the two over and over and over in such cool, interesting ways that it's I can totally see where this project was born from. I mean, it makes like, it's almost inevitable if like once I track your history, it's pretty badass.
Yeah. So now it brings us to the creation of RRBAYC, where I was again trying to prove a point. So it started with this guy, Jimmy, after the Zagabond thing happened, this influencer named Jimmy with like an I, Jimmy NFT on Twitter. He was saying that the funk community owes this $3 million that we procured from Zagabond for, all these scams that he did and, taking royalties and stuff like that, which he didn't deserve. That we owe that to Yuga Labs, who owns the IP to the crypto punks or something. And I mean, I was like, this is just such a stupid stance, like I was like, no one is buying a crypto funk thinking it's a crypto punk, first of all, and you can't copy an NFT. and we've completely transformed the meaning of these images in the flip and in, just the reminting of them. And I was asserting that to him, that you can't copy an NFT. And I just would repeat that over and over again. And he goes, well, you did copy it. And so to prove a point, which dawned on me just then, I was like, this guy doesn't have a hexagon. And I was like, oh, I could just mint his ape and make it a hexagon. And so I did that. And then I was like, dude, like I got your ape now or something, like some, and just because I knew that I was basically leading him into the answer that I wanted him to say for this argument, which was, which he literally was led to it. He goes, well, anyone could go on OpenSea and go to the Bored Ape Yacht Club collection and, go to that NFT and see that I own it. And I was like, exactly, dude. Like, that's the whole point of NFT, what you just described. And like, you're making your entire identity around this thing that you literally hadn't understood until I just like made you say it. And that clicked to him, and he hasn't responded. He used to like be really confrontational to me and stuff. He hasn't like responded since then, because I think it became obvious, like, oh shit, like, you're right. You can't copy an NFT. That's the whole point. Like, I will never have my ape stolen unless someone steals my private key. You know what I mean? Like what Ryder's doing is something different and is something new, and it's irrefutable because of the blockchain. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's almost like, because the blockchain exists, I'm literally not copying it.
Yeah, non-fungible. I mean,
exactly.
It's in the name, and I think it's educational, because we mentioned that earlier. But is that the moment that sparked the inspiration to do the full mint?
So no, it kind of, I mean, like a lot of, I think if you're a good artist, I would say that you don't have, kind of intensive plans, and you let, the atmosphere and the vibes, if you will, sort of sway the actions and your own, kind of, it's a dialogue with the world, art, so you allow that dialogue to happen. And, so after that mint, my friend Leander was like, can I get one? And I was like, okay. and I just put it on Foundation, and I put it at the minimum price, which is like 0.1. And he bought it. And then I don't remember if I tweeted, or I think I did tweet. I said, does anyone else want one of these? And then it was just like crazy. Like, I got, probably 50 requests in the next hour or something like that. And then like the next, it just snowballed. It literally snowballed. It was getting so crazy. And then I was hand minting all these. And like in the beginning, I didn't have a good system. So there's some duplicates. And then basically I teamed up with H Wonder and Middlemarch.
We just had an interview with Middlemarch as well. That guy is quite, dude. He's so impressive as well. That team that you put to, I don't know, just everyone that surrounded this energy at that moment was pretty cool.
Yeah,
he's an awesome guy as well.
Yeah. And so basically, we all came together and we made this RRBAYC site. I think after around, I don't know, maybe 1,500, I don't know the exact number of mints that were done by hand, which was really arduous. It's actually kind of funny how arduous. But part of that hand minting process was to create an interface that was closer to the way real art would work, where, if you go to a gallery or you go to an artist studio, you would pick out the art. You'd say, I like that painting. How much is that painting? I want that one. You know what I mean? And the way that mints work now is much more like a slot machine, where, you just put a quarter in, you get something maybe, and so, that's very antithetical to art, and so the idea of this like hand minting process and a lot of the gestures that we did, that I did, like taking out the traits and stuff like that was sort of to conjure up like a more, kind of like artistic sort of approach to a 10K project. Even though it a lot of this is sort of to also bring in this, or complicate this notion of like right click save or whatever. When people have this like tendency to think that the RRBAYC project is lazy because it's a copy or something. But if you actually look into it, it's anything but.
The reservation contract too.
Yes, the reservation contract, that whole website, that just the approach. I mean, intellectually, it's a completely different approach to NFT as well. And and technically, we're doing things that have never been done. We're releasing this marketplace that's going to have 0 fees if you own RRBAYC, which is unprecedented. And we're doing things that are anything but lazy. And I think it's really important for people in general to understand that that effort and intellect are really detethered. You wouldn't ask a musician, well, did you write that song in a minute? If you wrote that song in a minute, you shouldn't get paid for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it took a lot, like, for an artist to be able to say make the H&R Block logo, like, that artist worked on their craft the 10,000 hours or whatever, even more, to be able to sit down and hone all those times just to be able to make it.
I don't know
And
about
it's
that logo, but
I know I'm using that because it's so simple. It's
Right.
literally, but it's years of practice. And yeah, but I agree. The logo is very, very questionably simple, but that's kind of
it doesn't
the point there.
Simple or complicated has no real bearing on, the reality of something. The reality of something is how does it make you feel? What effect does it have on the world? And does it communicate something? And it doesn't really matter if you write, 2,000 pages or you write one sentence. If your 2,000 pages are gibberish and no one gives a fuck about them, and your one sentence is monumental and groundbreaking, which is better? This is pretty obvious stuff.
Straight up.
So,
and then, you mentioned the utility. So there's, when you own the Ryder Rips Bored Ape, you have access to the marketplace, and any Yuga Lab NFTs. Is it just going to be Yuga Lab NFTs or any NFTs?
I think for now we're going to keep it to Yuga Labs. So that means the apes, the mutants, the other side deeds, and the dogs.
Gotcha. So that really is another kind of, I don't know how to put this, a way of just like, how would you say it?
Well, one thing we haven't brought up yet in this conversation is the 6 months that I've been spending researching with other people, the Bored Ape Yacht Club and their ties to, I would say, Nazi troll culture. And, a lot of the provocation of this project is tied to that. And, using their own methods of cult building and cults, to create an army of educators who, with these recontextualized images are, bringing a new light to them, and a light that I feel is truthful and that is extremely important to disseminate. Because I think I'm 100% certain actually that this project was made by people who have nefarious intentions, are 4chan type of trolls, highly intelligent people, and they're being duplicitous and manipulative with their community and with popular culture at large, because they've really kind of brought in a lot of celebrities and promoted this project on a much wider scale than just the NFT community. So I think what they're doing is extremely dangerous and disgusting. And I think there are a lot of people who are just naive about internet culture and naive about the meaning behind anything. I think there are a lot of people, if you told them that a Christian cross means something, they would be stunned. They would say, "Oh, what are you talking about? That's just two lines that are intersecting. That doesn't mean anything." Like, literally, that's the level that I think a lot of people are at right now, because their own lives have such little meaning, and that there's very little subtext that's provided to information these days. So I think when you tell people that there are people who study philosophy, and there are people who care about history and study it, and that those people make things, that can, I've been finding that is somewhat shocking to people. I have no idea why, and I didn't expect it to be, and it's been a surprising journey to find that that's a shocking idea. But that's what I've been confronted with, and I guess part of that is because of the power that these PFP projects have in brainwashing people. Because once you become a member of this thing, you tie your finances to it, you change your PFP to it, you change your identity to it, you find community in it, you working with the community to bolster up this cartoon that is your identity becomes your life's mission, because your entire career, your finances, everything is tied to it. And to try to persuade someone that they're seeing something that they didn't see originally in this thing that they're so invested in is such a difficult task. And then, there are a lot of people who otherwise just wouldn't give a shit, and they don't understand how there are what it's like to spend 16 hours a day online immersed in certain cultures. And there's an entire language. My point is there, if you didn't know about anything. If you didn't know about gaming and you went into World of Warcraft and you were reading the chat, most likely you would have no idea what these people are talking about. It doesn't mean that what they're saying is gibberish. It just means you don't have the language to understand it. And that's what's going on here. There's a lot of language that these guys are speaking. And references and things that most people who are involved in this space and maybe in general just don't know about.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting way. And through your research, I've been starting to see a lot of this, and it's starting to like really make sense from my standpoint. And in this conversation, I'll try to stay as biased as possible. But I have my own opinions about this. That
So did they
just
change?
For the sake, did mine?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I just never looked at it in that light. So I was change. I would say absolutely, because I just didn't view it from that perspective. But once you put yourself in that perspective, a lot of these things start to check out. And I think anyone should start to question things when there's a lot of things that start to equal one.
No, it's it's just so silly at a certain point. It's like, oh, do you mean it's a coincidence that the guy who got an MFA in Bologna, who is known for writing fiction about Nazis, is interested in writing fiction about Nazis? Like, wow, that's crazy. That's a coincidence. Like, it's just so silly. And then, this whole Yuga Labs thing, if you just take a moment and you just Google surf the Kali Yuga, and you research Guinan, who is someone that they embedded their name into this puzzle that had a $500,000 prize, you start realizing that this fucking meme of surf the Kali Yuga is pretty big. Like, it's kind of like, it's not like on the level of Pepe, but it was a real meme. Like, this thing was disseminated wide around the internet.
Yeah.
And so, the idea that someone would embed this guy's name, Guinan, who is known for bringing that idea of the Kali Yuga into Western thought, is a darling of this thing called traditionalism, which like Steve Bannon and Peter Thiel are into, and a lot of other people online and stuff like that. But, that they would embed that guy's name their company Yuga Labs, have all this questionable imagery, make their logo look like a Nazi logo. And then they say, oh, it's actually just a reference to Zelda. Well, I mean, it was like a C character in one version of Zelda that no one played, called Between Two Worlds for Nintendo DS. And how do I know that that's a lie? Well, in an interview they gave where they were trying to explain where this came from, they actually cited the wrong version of Zelda that it came from, and they had to correct it, and that's still on archive.org. So they don't even know what they're talking about, and it's just so obvious. Anyone who's a big Zelda fan knows that, like, this is not a reference that would make sense.
And one thing that I just kind of, you enlightened me on, is the fact of leveraging the community and financial ties. I haven't thought about it from that as well. So, I mean, yeah, there's just so many things that, coincidences aside, maybe one, maybe two, but the more you research and the more I find that you see, it's very, very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, and let's not forget about just like the thousands of people who find it racist, like without even looking at the images, like Damon Dash, who, co-founded Rockefeller Records, just stated that he finds it racist, and there's literally thousands of people on Twitter who have spoken out about this. And, I think it's just proving, the state of the media right now in terms of being able to, perpetuate lies. And it's really not that surprising when you look at things that are way more significant that are way more hidden. Like, for instance, right now, there's an entire war in the Ukraine that the Western, liberal media has basically been saying, I think the right-wing media as well, has been saying that there are no Nazis in Ukraine. Well, that's just a lie. There are a lot of Nazis in Ukraine, and they're, doing the lion's share of the fighting. And it's actually difficult to get a photo of the soldiers without, photographing a Totenkampf or some other Nazi insignia on their uniform or some tattoo or something like that. And you see it over and over again. And, the Reuters is publishing a photo just recently of some guy with a Nazi tattoo, and, BBC has done it. And, oh, yeah, I mean, and the same publications that are saying there are no Nazis in Ukraine literally published 3 years ago video exposés showing all the Nazis in Ukraine. Look up, go on YouTube and type in Time Magazine Azov Battalion or Time Magazine Ukraine Nazis. You'll see there's this actually really well done video piece by Time Magazine talking about this stuff. And there's another one, that was published by NBC at one point, and The Guardian published something. And, actually the ADL came out, 4 years ago and said, watch out for the Azov Battalion who are neo-Nazis. And meanwhile, we're sending them money right now, like literally. That's not to say I'm pro-Russia. Like I don't have a dog in the race. Like I don't think Russia is any better, and they're probably worse. But the point being is that there are Nazis in Ukraine, and they're being completely hidden by Western media. So if you can hide an entire army, I don't think it's that hard to hide some dumb NFT information. You know what I mean? Why am I not devoting my life to talking about this Azov thing? Well, because it's not my domain. My domain, and has always been and will always be, because this is what I grew up with, is internet culture and internet art. And that's something I know for a fact I have the authority to speak on. And that's why I'm devoting so much time to this particular subject. Yes, I'm sure there are plenty of scams and plenty of evil things in the world, and probably things that are way more fucked up than what the Bored Ape Yacht Club is doing. But that's not my area of expertise. This is my area of expertise and my area of passion. So that's why I'm pursuing it.
Yeah, I mean, the way you speak on it as well is just, you've done your research, and it's very educational, all the way back to the beginning of the conversation, right? Of using, your vision and your creative approach to things. You're enlightening people on such bigger concepts that wouldn't be talked about, nor would they even be addressed or be supported without blindly supported. So I think your mission is on its way to it's probably be a forever fight, but such a solid one of just educating people of what's going on around them. And I think the more I learn about this project, the more and more I'm just like, wow, there's so much depth.
There's a lot of layers, and it happened naturally. Like, back to what I was saying before, like, as one friend asked me for this thing, and then I thought, well, damn, if I start minting these, I'll create an army of educators. One of my early tweets was something about that, like how, RRBAYC's mission is to create an army of educators and an army of people willing to do something good and speak out on the truth. And, I guess through NFTs and the observation of this whole culture, I've realized that when you do have financial interest involved in an idea, people are more motivated.
Yeah.
So people have asked me, well, why don't you do a free mint if it's such a noble cause? It's like, well, if you did a free mint, first of all, the Bored Ape guys would get the free mint and then burn them. But second of all, people wouldn't have that emotional connection to this thing and be a part of that mission, which is really, kind of, I think, aided because of the financial interest, which, you could say that is whatever. You could say that that's unethical or something. I don't really know if that's unethical or not, but the fact of the matter is that it exists, and people are more inclined to join a movement if they have skin in the game, and if there's a way that they can benefit themselves through the movement. And I don't know if that's necessarily. I think that's actually a good thing. It kind of makes sense. Imagine if you could, buy an NFT of a band that was an underground band in the beginning of their career, right? And then you follow their career, you tell all their friends about them, you promote their music, and that NFT goes up in value. Like, that would make all of your work, I mean, which wasn't necessarily hard work because it's something you're passionate about, but it would make it more meaningful.
I think that's a perfect example of just finding something you get behind and, spreading that knowledge or that information to others, because you're passionate about it, but there's some incentive. It feeds the economics of it, if you will, of just, incentivizing, and like you said, more skin in the game. But I think it's brilliant the way that you've kind of put this together and, done this. It makes so much more sense to me, and I'm sure anyone listening, after hearing the full lead up to this. So I want to thank you for taking the time to, tell me and everyone listening, the full story, because there are people that are just saying, hey man, this guy's right click save, and that's not impressive. And there's all types, and there's always going to be people like that. But I think when you really start to look at something like you should with all projects, especially if you're financially invested, really look into what is this core meaning for, what's going on. And I think this is a great example. At the surface, it looks like lazy. You mentioned that, but it's there's no laziness going on here. There's a lot of work and a lot of thought. So I do want to just thank you for taking the time to explain this. And
sure,
it's been a pleasure to learn more about you. I was definitely doing my research. I was very impressed, but now hearing you speak so elegantly on it too, I'm just like, this is something. It's very cool.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
And yeah, I mean, if there's anything else, I want to respect your time, but if there's anything else you want to leave the conversation with, I would love for you to do so.
I'll just say that, for the past 6 months, I have received death threats. I've received amounts of gaslighting nobody should be subjected to. I have been called all sorts of names. I continue to be ridiculed, and I'm pressing on. And this is something that I truly believe in. I'm truly passionate about. It's not about selling the NFT. I don't really care about that. Buy it, don't buy it, doesn't really matter. I never expected to even make an NFT about this, but the information on gordongoner.com is extremely important to understand, not only for context around the Bored Ape Yacht Club, but understanding the implications of getting involved in any NFT, and kind of the importance of doing your own research and understanding the origin and subtext behind things that you're investing in and getting behind. And I think that, this is sort of, where this whole industry is at its infancy, and we're have a lot of learning to do. And, I just hope that people, take a step back and consider the implications of gordongoner.com, and think about, from a really objective standpoint, if you're not a holder, it's probably easier to be objective. But if you are a holder, just kind of think that, I get nothing out of this. I never did this with any intention to get anything out of this. I've done it only because of some indescribable passion that I have and drive. I don't really understand it, to be honest with you. It's just a calling that I've had. And, I basically have been starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel here. And I know that, this is going to be something that people know en masse. And this is going to be something that is probably going to eclipse the entire Bored Ape Yacht Club and the entire perception of NFTs for popular culture. I think this is going to be something that is sort of what NFTs are known for, and I don't know what that means for the future of NFTs, but I do think that I do know that that's going to happen, and yeah, I mean, for me, it's just about getting to some sort of truth, and really using the tools of Web3, this decentralization, this ability to make money as an individual in sort of a collective, as a real tool, not to siphon this off to VCs and people with malicious intent. But yeah, I just, that's basically all I got to say.
Awesome, man. Well, again, appreciate your time. I mean, I continue learning a lot about the conceptual side of things by following you. I recommend anyone that's not familiar with Ryder Rips, all the links will be in the show notes. And yeah, check this guy out. He's been making art for so long now. There's so many projects you could check out. I know I'm personally going to check out the Red Bull installation as well.
Yeah, please
I find that super rad. And yeah, thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Peace.
Welcome to Futurify, where our mission is to educate and elevate Web 3.0. Prepare for exploration in 3, 2, 1.